Hello and welcome to the Mindfulness Zone. My name is Vinod Ravindranathan and I'm here to share with you some tools that will help you to step outside of your thought process and into hopefully what is a more peaceful, joyful and hopeful state of mind. Whether you are a beginner or a seasoned meditator, I really hope that you will enjoy the tools that I will introduce you to. You will be able to find more recordings either on YouTube or in the form of podcasts through my website at www.mindfulness.zone. That's www.mindfulness.zone. And I would like to now invite you to find a comfortable posture, preferably one that helps you to feel quite alert. But we are flexible in these practices, and therefore if you would much rather lie down, please feel free to do so, because we are not here to force ourselves. I'm deeply appreciative that you have all joined me in this morning's practice. It's very special to have this opportunity to practice together because of the momentum that we create as a group. And so as we sit together, in some ways we become a single entity practicing together and merging into a single space. I normally teach in a little room in South London, a beautiful little room, quite secluded in an old building, strange colors and lots of beautiful statues and art around me. And normally I welcome those who attend the practice so that they settle into that space, which is very different from the spaces that they're usually accustomed to, their home environments, their work environments. But when we practice in this way through the internet, where you listen to me from your homes, from your personal space, one thing that hasn't quite changed is that environment that you call your home. You're within very familiar space, filled with memories, filled with things you have left undone, things that you have to do, especially over the past few weeks with the virus, the COVID-19 virus lockdown. This space has become our office, it's become our home, it's become the space we share with our families, and so it fulfills many different functions all at once. And so a very nice way to begin today's practice is to still spend a few moments arriving. But what do we mean by arriving when we've already been in this space for the past few weeks, rarely leaving it? If you like, notice where you are right now, as in physically. If you like, use your fingers, feel the space around you. I don't know, are you sitting on a sofa or a cushion or your bed? Is there furniture around you? Just feel, notice this particular space that your body is resting upon, and let us simply arrive in this space at this particular spot, and in some ways creating a little bubble around us which turns this space into a space for practice. Your mind may be arguing with you and telling you, I've been here many times. There's nothing new about it. There's nowhere to arrive because I've been here for days and weeks. But we can take some consolation in the fact that every moment is a new moment. Even biologically, new cells have appeared within our body overnight. Your nails have grown, your hair may have grown, and some cells have left us. And so there is newness, there is freshness even biologically, and even mentally, emotionally. There have been many experiences, new experiences. Even from 10 minutes ago, we were having a completely different type of conversation. And now we've entered into a new state of mind, a fresh state of mind. And since yesterday, since last week, since weeks ago, we've had so many different experiences that have changed us in many different ways. And so the person sitting here before the computer, before the phone, before the tablet at this practice is very much a new person who you are just getting to know. This person we call ourselves, changing at every moment becoming a new moment. We've all noticed how our beliefs have changed over time, from the very simple beliefs to the more deeper and complicated ones. And so life is a state of constant change. And so let us settle into this space with a sense of curiosity. What does it feel like to inhabit this space as I step outside of my memories of what this space means to me? As I step into a single point in time, free of the past and free of all anticipations into the future, this space that I call my present moment, where I can feel my body resting upon this cushion, this mat, this chair. And so let us arrive more fully by exploring the sensations of what it feels like to be resting upon this surface. I would like to invite you to magnify the sensations that you can feel in the lower parts of your body, which are in contact with the chair, with the cushion, with the mat, with the flooring. Sensations that will feel very distinct to each and every one of us because of the different locations that we find ourselves in. And so if you are resting upon a soft surface, you will notice how it molds to the shape of your body, supporting it. And alternatively, if you are on a harder surface, you will notice how your body manages to adapt and support itself as it rests upon that surface. And then we begin to explore the effect of this force that we call gravity on our body, noticing the way in which gravity pulls down upon our skin, our muscle, our bone, the organs within our body. And how is this gravity, the ability of gravity to aid in the relaxation process that our body experiences? And so letting go of any tightness that you may be experiencing in your body, tightness that you no longer need to hold on to as you surrender your body to gravity, just using as little strength and force to keep your body up, but more allowing your body to simply balance itself, align itself, perhaps the head balancing itself on the bone at the back of the neck, and that bone connected to the spinal column, which arches itself, somehow balancing the whole upper body on the base of the spine, and the base of the spine connected to the pelvic bone, and all of this under the control of gravity now. And how does this change the experience you can feel underneath your body, those points of contact between your body and the cushions, the chairs, the space underneath it? Gently stepping back from your body and observing, no longer seeking to control, completely letting go, In many ways, this sets the pace for our practice today, because as we release, relinquish, and let go control of the body, something else begins to take over our muscles, our blood cells, our muscle tissue, and that's nothing other than our immune systems. The intelligence within every cell that we hold within our bodies. Most of the time we wrestle with the immune system because of our worries, because of the stress that we feel, because of all those things we think we need to do. But we remind ourselves that today's practice is about releasing all that we need to do and to simply be. I know we turned up this morning with an intention to meditate, perhaps even learn something about mindfulness or vipassana, all different labels given to the different meditation techniques. But they all involve doing something, don't they? What would it feel like to release the need to meditate, to be mindful, to do anything at all? And let's experiment with that. Let's see what that feels like. Completely releasing the need to do all these practices which have been labeled, and simply come back to something very simple that we can be sure we know something about. What do we know? What are we familiar with? We know how to breathe. So let's breathe. The mind is saying breathe. Yes, I've been doing that since the day I was born. What's new about that? That's not a practice. And that's the chatter of the mind. But we smile as we listen to the chatter of the mind, because what we are entering into is a process called conscious breathing, where we become very conscious of this process that we call breathing, and we very gently step outside of that thought process and see how well we can experience the different sensations associated with every breath that flows in and out. Perhaps focusing first on the breath that flows in. How does that feel? What can you feel as the air flows in through the nostrils? What's the temperature of the air? Bringing a sense of interest, that quality we call curiosity, almost as though you were breathing for the first time and learning how to breathe. That first breath where the air, it enters in through the tips of the nostrils, and then it makes its way up the nasal passage. The air interacts with the sensitive surfaces within the nasal passage, which are slightly moist. Can you feel the tiny hairs that filter the dust, which are located at the tip of the nostrils? Can you feel the air flowing past these tiny hairs and deeper and higher into the nasal passage? It might feel slightly cooler, perhaps a little bit crisp, and I don't know what your sense of smell is telling you right now as you breathe in. And then watching and observing as this inflow converts itself, turns itself into an out breath. And again, bringing a sense of interest and curiosity to the multitude of sensations that we can experience as the breath flows downward and outward, with perhaps slight variations in the temperature of the air. Is there a change in the humidity level? What does it feel like as it flows down the passage? And as it exits through the nostrils, are there any surfaces outside of the nostrils that this air brushes against? Does it brush against the upper lip? further down, or we remind ourselves there is no right experience and there is no wrong experience, because this is a practice about our own experience. A short moment ago, we were releasing the need to practice meditation, to practice mindfulness. We said we were going to stick with things that we knew, things that we were familiar with, so we know how to breathe. We've been breathing, and for a moment there, we were breathing very consciously. So what else are we very familiar with that we know how to do, that we don't have to learn? We know how to sit. And so becoming conscious now of the simple fact that you are sitting. Well, some of you may be lying down, and if you're lying down, that's absolutely fine too. Just being conscious of the fact that you're lying down or sitting, and you know how to do that, and what it feels like to have the body in this posture. You feel the points of contact between your body and the surface underneath it. If you're sitting upright, you notice the miracle of being able to balance your body in this way. Something we do take for granted, but which many, many people on this planet are unable to do. And so we experience what it feels like to simply hold this posture and simply see what this feels like. Experience it in its entirety. The shoulders, the positioning of the head, the chest, the stomach underneath it. A moment ago, we were observing our breath through our nostrils. We were consciously breathing through our nostrils, but as we notice our stomachs, we can perhaps remind ourselves that we can also observe this process, this breathing process, through the rising and the falling of the stomach wall. Let's do that for a few brief moments. Notice the movement of the stomach wall, of the stomach muscles, of that space that we call the stomach, which holds our digestive system and so much more. And let us notice how as we breathe in, how the stomach wall rises, and how as we exhale and we release our breath, how it gradually and gently falls, rising and falling. And if your mind needs something to do, because it's so used to doing things, isn't it? If you would like to give it something to do, then just allow it to label this rising as rising. So rising as you breathe in, rising, 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 rising. And as you exhale and as you breathe out, falling, falling. Let the mind hold on to that label, falling, falling, falling. And you'll gradually notice your mind aligning itself to that which your body is experiencing through your stomach. The breathing process, which becomes very visible through this movement, this rising and falling of the stomach wall, grounding you deeper and deeper and deeper into this moment. It's almost certain that every single one of us practicing here, we would have noticed the movements of the mind, and very often the mind will take us away into some memory or event in the past, or it may project itself into the future. And this is probably a very good time to remind ourselves that when this happens, when we get caught up in our thoughts, when we suddenly find ourselves lost in thoughts, it does not mean that we are failing in this practice. And so we remind ourselves there is no failure in this practice. Because our job, our task, our aim in today's practice is not to force our minds to go still. We're not here to discover a blank mind. We're not here to create a blank mind. But we're here to develop a new relationship with our mind. And this is a relationship that is based on the observing of this thought process from a space that's much larger, so much more vast than the thought process. That can be a very abstract concept to grasp. And so I like using metaphors here. And so if you can visualize your thoughts as clouds, always moving. Have you ever tried to stop a cloud? No, we don't. We would never even dream of trying to stop clouds from moving because that's their nature. But we can notice them. We can sometimes admire their beauty and sometimes tremble at how dark and grey and stormy they may look. But they're still clouds, passing clouds. And what often happens when we get lost in our thoughts, when we feel those emotions, whether it could be anger, those emotions that society has labeled negative, pain, depression, suffering. What does happen is that we begin to believe ourselves to be these clouds, trapped in the middle of these clouds, unable to see clearly and traveling with the clouds from some event in the past onto some projection into the future, lost, even devoid of direction. And that can feel very helpless sometimes, where we can no longer even see where we are going. And today's practice is about stepping outside of these clouds, outside of this thought. And that's what we do when we find these doorways into this moment that we call the present moment, where we find different tools like our breathing process. And a moment ago, how we tuned it to our bodies that we noticed were present at this point, at this moment. And these are opportunities, tools which we use to step outside of these clouds, outside of these thoughts, so that we shift our identification from being the thought and being the cloud to very gradually, very gently becoming initially the space between the clouds, and then perhaps becoming the space underneath the clouds. And then expanding to perhaps also become the space above the clouds. And when we talk about the space above the clouds, it becomes quite almost infinitely spacious, doesn't it? With all the millions and trillions of stars and planets out there. And then the thoughts become smaller and smaller and smaller, and those thoughts represent the problems, the challenges that we once believed were so large and unmanageable. But stepping outside of these thoughts, it changes the whole relationship. There is clarity. We begin to notice the shape of the clouds. We begin to notice the different shades that they take. Some white and fluffy and often joyful and harmless. and some dark and murky and full of anger and hatred and frustration. We don't beat ourselves up for the gray clouds, the guilt, all of that. We don't, because it's stuff we've accumulated over our lifetime. Teachers, parents, the media telling us how we should look, how we should behave, what makes you a successful person, how much you should have in your bank, the degrees and the qualifications you should have to be considered educated. Standards which, when we somehow find ourselves unable to meet, we beat ourselves up about. We criticize ourselves, but it's not us. The criticism, the judgment, it comes from within the clouds, from all those various voices that we've listened to and absorbed through this lifetime and perhaps lifetimes. And so that's what this practice awards us. It gives us an opportunity to step outside of all of this. And this space between the clouds, between the thoughts, those gaps, that space underneath and above clouds, there is so much kindness here. And that's why in these practices, you will hear teachers and facilitators asking you not to judge sensations, not to judge thoughts. It's because there is no judgment in this space. There's only kindness and understanding. Many of us feel guilt about things we've done or not done in our past. But this is a practice where we begin to acknowledge that everything in our past is no longer relevant. And in that point in our history, we only did what we believed was best at that point. And so we release, we let go, we forgive ourselves. And as we learn to forgive ourselves in this way, we also begin to understand that all those around us who we believe have wronged us, we're also acting out to the best of their abilities based on their experiences, based on their childhoods, how much care, how much understanding they were given. And so this is a practice where we go within ourselves, we understand ourselves, we learn about ourselves, and most importantly, we forgive ourselves and enter into this moment where we make peace with all that we find so that there is only clarity and peace and allowing. I really hope that you enjoyed this practice as much as I did. And if you did, there are so many more recordings, podcasts, and YouTube audio clips on my website, www.mindfulness.zone. That's www.mindfulness.zone. Please do also feel free to visit the website and join me on one of my daily meditations, the details of which you will find on the website. Thank you and goodbye for now.